Hello and welcome back to the channel. There has been a lot of talk recently about Australia's housing crisis, and also there's a housing crisis in many parts of the Anglo world, including where I am here in London. We are simply not building enough homes. And when we do build a new home, it is dearer to build a new home than to buy an existing home. So there's no real incentive to buy a new home. This is topical because the Australian government has legislated major changes to the capital gains tax and negative gearing rules for residential housing. The argument around these tax changes is that they are contributing to making homes unaffordable. And I recently saw an article by Dr. Nurasanjad, apologies if I mispronounced that, about using prefabricated homes from China and Asia, which I thought was really interesting. Australia actually has a marvellous institution called the Productivity Commission, which is fairly unique to Australia. And in February 2025, they wrote a 104-page report on housing productivity. And I've read it so that you don't have to. The report said that over the last 30 years, the gross value added per hour of housing has declined by 12%. So this figure allows for the increasing quality and size of homes. This is not just an Australian thing. Productivity of housing construction has fallen across other Western economies as well. One of the solutions mentioned to this productivity problem was in innovation, in particular to using modular construction, and here what we're interested in is prefabricated construction, but I think modular and prefabricated go a bit together. In Australia, the construction industry's fragmented into many small firms, and this has discouraged innovation. Less than 5% of homes in Australia are prefabricated. Prefabrication would allow one, robot-assisted automation. Two, greater efficiency. Tradies can work in one place at a time. Three, the components can be higher quality. Four, higher output as production can continue for 24 hours a day unaffected by weather problems. So this is taken from the Productivity Commission report I referenced earlier. Japan, Singapore and China have a highly developed prefabricated housing sector. We are already quite happy to import cars from China, so why not prefabricated housing? This could start with social housing, student housing and key worker accommodation in the regions. This could also start with importing bathroom and kitchen pods, wall panels and so on. Assembly centres could then be established close to ports where these elements can be assembled in purpose-designed factories. Now, here I'm referencing the doctor's report. As the doctor says, Australian workers would still do the site works, installation, services, certification, maintenance and upgrades. Then we would be looking for technology transfer arrangements, he argues, a quid pro quo for getting government building contracts. The idea would be that the industry could then take over here in Australia and have most of the product onshored. Certainly in these times of changing strategic risks, we do not want to be permanently beholden to one or more overseas countries for our building supply. A company is actually raising money for this kind of business here in Australia. It's called Modular Construction Masters. I'm not recommending investment, by the way. It's just, I read about it. They are going to set up a prefabricated home factory in Vietnam. They're looking to raise $30 million US initially. They will build the homes in Ho Chi Minh City and then ship them to Australia. So if I just quote from the Australian Financial Review, traditional building works in a linear approach, preparing the site, pouring a slab and then beginning to build. MCM's prefabricated building system allows 95% of the home build to be done in a factory while the civil site is being prepared, saving time and money, according to Gordon, the promoter of the scheme. I see a lot of value in the higher density products, residential apartments and affordable housing accommodation for essential workers. With the rezoning in some metro areas, we have the opportunity to build quality and quickly, and then student accommodation as well, Gordon said. This is Mr. Terry Gordon. We also know that the Commonwealth Bank recently announced that it would be the first major bank to offer finance for homes that are prefabricated. This highlights the innate conservatism of the lending and building sectors in general. But it's only recently that you could actually easily borrow money for a prefabricated home. Builders, lenders, and consumers are quite conservative in this area. Unless a provider can enter the market with a substantially lower cost, it will be a challenge to change the current building system, I believe. The Australian building system is also hampered by a complicated regulatory and planning system. It seems to me that at least initially these prefabricated homes will fall into more limited categories, things like workers' accommodation on mine sites. It would probably require more input from federal, state and local governments to coordinate large-scale residential, modular, prefabricated housing for the mainstream. This would need to be in tandem with the liberalisation of the planning system. Perhaps the housing industry needs a disruptor to take this on, an Elon Musk of housing. This person would require deep pockets and a massive focus on innovation, quality, but also a commitment to drive down the cost of housing construction, an IKEA of housing, if you will. The Productivity Commission identified 4 major problems areas in housing construction. 1, complex, slow approvals. It can take 10 years or more to get a housing development or apartment complex to the approval stage. So the actual building time is relatively small. 2, a lack of innovation, in particular not taking on digitisation and prefabrication. A lot of the innovation is happening at the point of manufacturing, new brick types and the like. 3, a lack of scale. Most of the industry are very small scale firms. So that limits their access to capital for things like prefabricated housing methods. And 4, workforce issues. Our antiquated apprenticeship and training system means that we suffer staffing problems and people not staying in the industry. The Productivity Commission identified 4 things that government can do. First of all, better coordination of the approval process. One of the great problems in our system is that local councils have no real incentive to approve high density housing. So often these approvals for larger projects are being moved to the state level simply to get things done. 2, review regulations. The Productivity Commission estimates that regulation adds between, get this, $135,000 and $320,000 to the cost of an average new home, and $40,000, that's a house, and $40,000 to $170,000 to the cost of an average new unit. These are huge numbers. The National Construction Code has become an enormous burden to builders with different versions across states and territories. This would be a great impediment to a national business seeking to invest in prefabricated housing, potentially having 8 sets of different rules. 3, remove barriers to innovation. This involves things like consistent definitions across the housing industry codes and investing in research and development to foster innovation. 4, improvements in workforce flexibility and mobility. For example, this might involve allowing easier certification for overseas workers to enter our building industry. So the residential building industry is something of a schmozzle. It requires a lot of change from government at all 3 levels, looking at planning, immigration levels, but also innovation. And the promotion of prefabricated homes could be a part of the answer. But a lot of regulatory and research work would be required to maximise that benefit. The planning system also needs liberalisation, in my view. So what do you think we should be doing to lower the cost of housing? Does prefabrication make sense to you, or does it sound like a lot of very boring homes? That's, to me, a bit of a risk. Please let me know in the comments, and peace and love to you.